Hey, it's Eddie from Priority. Let's put together your new Classic Plus.
Before we get started, it's important to know that we always recommend that your bicycle be professionally assembled. Or if you choose to follow this video and do home assembly, we recommend that a professional bicycle mechanic safety check your bicycle before riding. Now let's get started.
First, grab some household tools, a Phillips head screwdriver, and some scissors. And open up that box. Start by opening up your accessory box. In the parts box, we have your manuals. You want to take some time and familiarize yourself with those before moving forward. We've got the tools you need for assembly, a rear reflector, pedals, and a water bottle cage. Let's get to it. Now that we've removed all the packing material, with the bike upright like this, turn the fork around, and I'm turning it around clockwise from my vantage point so that the front brake is on the front of the bike and the cable is running here in the front. So now I'm going to grab the handlebars, and now I'm going to be pretty careful just to make sure that my cable routing looks right. And that means that all the cables are running here in front of the bike, that my gear cable and my brake cable are running here from the right side to the left side of the head tube, and that my brake cable is clear of those. So now, with the cables in the proper orientation, just put the stem right into the steerer, and then grab your 6mm Allen key, that's the biggest one that we included, and tighten that down. There's markings here on the stem that show the minimum insertion, so you want to insert it at least past the minimum insertion line. So now do your best to eye that up to center, but we're going to double check that before the end of the assembly. Now let's put the front wheel on. So grab your front wheel, and if you look at the tire tread, you should match the same direction as the back. So if there's sort of a V shape made by the tread, that V is pointing towards with the skinny part pointing towards the front. All right, now loosen your axle nuts. You don't need to take them completely off. Just leave enough space so the dropouts will fit. And you'll see you have 3 washers on here, and you want to keep those on. If they do happen to come off, the order is that it goes drop out of the fork, 1 flat washer, 1 hooked washer, another flat washer, and then the axle nut. So just push those towards the axle nuts for now. I'm going to want to unhook the front brake to make this more easy. So to unhook the front brake, reach down and grab the caliper here. You can use one hand to pull this piece, this is called the noodle, and push the other side of the caliper in. And you'll see that this part that holds the noodle in place will just drop away, and that'll allow the brake to open up. So now just insert the wheel into the fork and place the fork dropouts onto the axle. Now go ahead and find that hooked washer again. And there's a little hole here on the dropout of the fork that's designed for the hook of the hooked washer. And that's a safety mechanism to keep your wheel from coming off if your wheel does get loose. Go ahead and do that on both sides. Now go ahead and tighten down those axle nuts. And you're going to do that with the supplied 15mm wrench. I like to do a little bit at a time on each side. And I'm doing this with a little bit of weight here on the handlebars too. And what that's doing is I'm forcing the wheel up into the dropouts to make sure that the wheel is sitting evenly in the middle. So with a little weight on the handlebars, turn one side, turn the other side, and that's clockwise to tighten. And you want to get that nice and tight enough to leave an imprint in the palm of your hand from the tool. Now that the wheel's installed, let's reconnect the front brakes. So this is a two-hand job as well. And if this spring pops out too, which may happen, this spring just sits right here behind this little tab on the brake caliper. So with both hands, use your right hand to push the caliper in on this side and pull the noodle out. And then use the other hand just to guide that noodle in place back into the caliper. Slide the dust cover over, and that's it. So grab that 6mm Allen key again, and loosen the bolt on the underside of the stem. So you want to set these to be just about level to the ground for best comfort. And you'll see that there are some lines here on the handlebar, and you want to make sure that those lines are just peeking out on either side of the stem. If you see way more lines on one side than the other, then it's too far over, and you can slide it to make sure it's reoriented in the middle. So while holding the handlebar in your desired final position, with one hand, go ahead and tighten that stem bolt down. And you want this to be nice and tight. So tight that it leaves an imprint in the palm of your hand. So now we can go back and just loosen this stem bolt as well to make sure that our handlebars are pointing in the right direction. So to get your handlebars perfectly straight, with the stem bolt a bit loose, just hold the wheel with your foot and then just line the angle of the stem up with the tire. If you find that it's kind of hard to see this, you can also just push the front wheel into a corner and then use that as the line that you line the handlebars up with. I like to close one eye when doing this, but there's different philosophies on the best way. So then go ahead and tighten that stem bolt back down, and this is going to be nice and tight as well. You want to see that imprint of the tool in the palm of your hand. All right, great. So now grab your seat and seat post, and you want to pick up your 5mm Allen key as well. It's your medium-sized Allen key. So you can go ahead, just slide that seat post in here. Don't worry about the height for now, but go ahead and insert it enough so that it's well into the frame, and then tighten down that seat post bolt. Nice and tight, but we're going to want to check that again before riding the bike. Now go ahead and grab your rear reflector and your screwdriver. So go ahead and just remove the screw from the reflector. And the reflector itself does have an up and a down. So the correct orientation is so that when sitting at the angle on the seat post, it's perpendicular to the ground, so it's most visible. So then go ahead and slide that over. I like to put it up near the top to give us a bit more flexibility, but it's personal preference. Now let's install your pedals. So let's start by identifying which pedal's which. Pedals are side specific, so there's a right and there's a left pedal. If you look here in the hole on the outside of the pedal, you should hopefully see an R and an L. Right, left. If you're missing a sticker, the left pedal also always has little lines here on the spindle to help identify it. So let's start with the right pedal. I'm going to orient my cranks here so I have nice, easy access to the back of the crank as well. This is my favorite way to start installing pedals, and that's by using a 6mm Allen key. These pedals have a slot in the back for it, so it makes it really easy to thread in. So I'm just going to hold the pedal here, try and get it as close to the right orientation as possible, and then I'm going to use my 6mm on the back of the pedal. So from your point of view, I'm turning this in a clockwise direction. So I'm just doing my best to thread it in as far as it'll go. This is a real quick way to get pedals on. So now that it's most of the way installed, I'm going to go ahead and take the 15mm wrench. I'm going to take the 15mm wrench, put it here on the pedal spindle, and I'm going to hold the rear wheel and then turn this very firmly to get that pedal nice and tight. So now, let's go on to the left side. The left side can get confusing sometimes because it's actually reverse threaded compared to the right side. So from my point of view, I'm threading this in counterclockwise, or the opposite threading as the right pedal. I'm still using this 6mm on the back of the pedal to thread it in a bit more quickly, but it's turning the opposite direction as we were turning with the right side. Now that we're right here too, we can go ahead and install the water bottle cage. I'm using the 4mm Allen key to remove the water bottle cage mounting bolts. Okay, nice and snug, not too tight. Now let's just move this front reflector to the proper position here on the front of the handlebar. Tighten that down with your Phillips screwdriver. It's normal for a bike to need air fresh out of the box. And in fact, you're going to want to use a pump to check your tire pressure every few weeks, if it's been a few weeks since the last time you checked it. The tires on the Classic Plus are recommended between 65 and 85 PSI. I like them right in the middle at about 80. So to pump up your tires, just make sure you remove the valve cap. Take the head of the pump with the lever flipped down. Identify the larger hole here on the head of the pump. Push that firmly onto the valve, and as you're pushing it down, flip the lever out to lock the head in place. Go ahead and pump away. You'll see that as you're pumping, the needle on the gauge goes up, and then it goes back down to a resting point. The resting position of the needle is what reflects the amount of pressure in the tire. So go ahead and pump away until the resting position of the needle is between 65 and 85 PSI. Then go ahead and flip that lever down, remove the head of the pump, put the valve cap back on. Grab that 5mm Allen key, and we'll double check our saddle height before going out for a test ride. So ideally you want the saddle height to be somewhat close to your hip height when you're standing, or when you're riding the bike, you'll be on your tippy toes towards the ground, or getting nearly full leg extension with a slight bend in your knee at the bottom of the pedal stroke. If it feels like you're not quite fully extending, you might want to raise that saddle a bit. Or if it feels like you're locking your knee out at the bottom of the pedal stroke, you want to lower it a bit. But set it to your comfort, and then go ahead and make sure that seat post clamp is nice and tight. If you followed this video and did home assembly on the bike, you're going to want to make sure you bring this by your local mechanic to do a safety check and make sure everything is good and tight and safe for you to ride. But if you have any questions about this assembly, the Classic Plus, or Priority in general, please give us a call, shoot us a text or an email. We're available 7 days a week, and the contact information is on your screen.